one person could say something without yelling, another person could say, oh yeah, I disagree and here's why. And then you'd have 30 people who you didn't even know were in the conversation, who you thought might be listening because, let's say, their desks are around the water cooler. They all start clapping or applauding or thumbs-upping or pointing and saying yes to one part of the conversation. It's just different from the water cooler.
Back in 2021, on the Slate Slack, the resignation of Donald McNeil Jr. from the New York Times was big news. Did you get that? The controversy that brewed on Slack at one company was now being discussed on Slack at another company. The consensus on Slate Slack appeared to be that McNeil had been wrong to say the N-word in full. And he was wrong to argue that in certain contexts, it's okay for white people to use it. Not as a slur hurled at people, but when the word itself is being discussed. And so, everything kicked off on February the 15th, 2021. Where were you physically when this all happened?
This was during the pandemic, and I was at home because it was President's Day. And I think the distance, the overall distance, contributed to the lack of true communication.
In February 2021, remember, most American journalists were still working from home.
There's just an aspect to being in physical proximity to others that works as an inoculation. For over a year, we hadn't actually seen or touched each other. I think a lot of U.S. workplaces, certainly Slate, became attenuated, and I do think it affected the discussion that we had.
Mike's podcast, The Gist, prided itself on its commitment to free discussion and lively arguments. So, he decided to make the case for the defense of Donald McNeil on the Slate Media Slack channel.
I did think that it was an overreaction, and I thought that the journalistic community calling for his head had lost the plot a little bit.
And this is what he said.
My points are, his internal conduct was in a gray area. You guys don't think it was. Here's my position. Expressing the views, not the word, the views he did on that trip are not fireable.
Now, we're editing these messages for brevity because Mike is a pretty verbal guy.
The question is an out loud utterance of that word in a work environment fireable, censurable, etc.? I don't think it's proper to use it in casual conversation. If you want my opinion, it's that there are some limited reasons why a non-African American journalist or professor use the word when conveying a quote in the name of clarity or factualness. But it's not a comfortable point to even pursue right now. If I had the opposite opinion, I know 100 ways I would make the opinion I actually have seem horrible and racist, and you know what? Maybe it is.
And with that, Mike returned to shoveling snow. According to Mike, the argument he was making, that sometimes people could use the N-word when quoting a book like The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn or discussing the word itself, had been Slate's own policy for many years. But Mike says he never used it in full in the Slack discussion that day.
I, of course, did not use the word in my discussion, and I didn't even use the phrase that I've mentioned here a couple times, the N-word, because there were instances that I heard of that even saying the N-word had quote-unquote triggered people and also gotten people in trouble. So I knew not to do that.
Mike thought his arguments were robust, but respectful. And he also thought he worked somewhere that welcomed co-workers hashing out difficult topics with each other.
One or two people said they disagreed with me, and that was pretty respectful. But then things changed. Under some of the comments and critiques, you see these little emojis collecting. And it wasn't that the people in the channel weighed in, it's that one person would weigh in, sometimes pretty fiery, and they'd get dozens of thumbs up emojis or fire emojis or emojis saying, yeah, I agree.
How long did all this go on for?
The discussion went on for, I think, a couple hours. And there are breaks, you know, there are hour-long breaks or 20-minute breaks. You know, the cardiovascular enterprise of clearing snow is really wonderful for making one forget a stupid intramural journalism discussion.
What Mike's talking about here is one of the most important and weirdest things about modern messaging apps. Unlike a face-to-face conversation, a group chat is an example of asynchronous communication. In other words, you say something to me, and I might not see your message for another hour, and I might not respond for another hour after that. Okay, in my case not true because I'm glued to my phone, but you get the point. When we're in a group chat, half of our brain can be there, and the other half can be in the real world, watching television or commuting home or clearing the snow from our parents' driveway. That split attention can lead to misunderstandings, with other people feeling like someone has just chucked a hand grenade into the conversation and wandered off.
At the time, I didn't sense this was anything that could change my life, let alone change tomorrow.
And when did you find out that it was something that was going to change your life?
Within a day or two, I was told I was suspended, which I couldn't believe, and I was very upset about it. I thought it was not just.
At the time, one of Mike's black co-workers, Joel Anderson, said, "For black employees, it's an extremely small ask to not hear that particular slur and not have debate about whether it's okay for white employees to use that particular slur." Slate itself said the suspension was, quote, "not a decision based around making an isolated, abstract argument in a Slack channel." They didn't elaborate further, but Mike says other discussions around the editorial use of the word were also cited against him. You get this call saying you're suspended without pay. At that point, do you lose access to the Slack channel? Do you go peek back in there and think, like, what happened here? Like, read it again and think, where did it all go wrong?
I did read it again when I had access to it, and I went over and over it for, did I say anything wrong? Did they say anything wrong? Would I have said anything differently? That's an interesting question. A reasonable person might say, you know, these are generally good points, well phrased, but idiotically pursued given the tenor of the times.
Days later, there was an all-staff meeting for Mike's co-workers to express their feelings. It became obvious he was no longer welcome at Slate. So, he took his podcast independent. At Mike's new company, Peach Fish Productions, he still uses Slack. But, he says, the company is just 4 people. That's small enough that a blow-up like the one at Slate couldn't happen. Do you think this could have happened without Slack?
I don't know if this would have happened without Slack. It does seem like what is consensus is maybe just the consensus of the loudest people.
This story is an incredible chain reaction. Each domino falls into another, and the anger and the applause spreads from Slack channel to Slack channel. It feels new and old at the same time.
I think the generational aspect of it can't be overstated.
Katie Herzog of Blocked and Reported agrees. So do you think that's a feature of this, is a kind of generational divide? We're talking about, I guess, millennials and Gen Z using Slack.
Oh, for sure. I think Slack can be used for good depending on the context. But if it's being used to pressure management into firing people for their political views or because they have the gall to mention a word, then it becomes a weapon.
But do you think that there is a good side to some of this? In that we all know that newsrooms can be pretty brutally hierarchical and that stars can kind of get indulged in behaviour that other people wouldn't do. Does this kind of level the playing field a bit?
Probably a little bit, but I just think it recreates the hierarchy in other ways.
On seeing these blow-ups, a couple of other companies, such as the cryptocurrency exchange Coinbase, banned political discussions from their Slack channels. 5% of Coinbase's staff left in protest, saying this was censorship. They said the ban stopped them holding their bosses to account. Remember Bruce Daisley, who used to work at Twitter? He thinks this is a generational divide.
People who are 19, 20, who are selling you clothing items, have gone to their bosses and said, what's our company view on this? Most of us believe we can't change the government, we can't change the world, but we do think the biggest thing that we can have some impact on is our company. It sort of represents a sense of disenfranchisement.
In late 2020, the software giant Salesforce bought Slack for an extraordinary amount of money, $27 billion. In January 2023, the CEO and co-founder left the company. He announced his departure, where else? In the company's Slack channel. The message ended with with a heart emoji. Sadly, the ratio of tacos to side eyes in response went unrecorded. Last year, his replacement, Lydianne Jones, gave an interview to Wired in which she said that maybe people shouldn't be slacking so much.
So I certainly personally believe that you have to have a space to recharge and recalibrate your mind.
You heard it from the very top. To work in future, thank you.
The idea that anybody would bring their whole self to work, I mean, I don't really know what that means, but it sounds bad. There are certain things that you should not do at work. You never want to piss off the office manager, you never want to cook fish in the microwave, and you never want to bring your whole self to work. You gotta have some boundaries.
I think probably 80% of people who are lurkers have been the ones who've been proved right all along by the great Slack debacle of 2020. Lurking is good. Be a lurker.
Lurking is good, yes. Never post.
Next time, the woman who took digital dating to its logical conclusion by marrying a chatbot.
100%, I would never go back to humans, ever again.
Helen Lewis Has Left the Chat was written and presented by me, Helen Lewis, and produced by Tom Poole. Original music was by Coach Conrad. The editor was Craig Templeton Smith. It was a Tempo and Talker production with BBC Radio 4 and BBC Sounds.
And you can hear the next edition here on Radio 4 at the same time next week, or indeed find the whole series right now on BBC Sounds by searching for Helen Lewis Has Left the Chat. Nat Sciver-Brunt is the first English woman to be honoured as Wisden's leading cricketer in the world, and she'll be joining Jessica Crichton on Women's Hour next to discuss the accolade and her career in the sport. And if that's up your street, you might also want to catch today's drama, Batgirls. It's the first of 3 linked dramas inspired by a true story about a young female South Asian cricket team that became Yorkshire champions. That's at the usual time of 2:15 this afternoon.
Cafe Hope, uplifting conversation for Monday mornings on BBC Radio 4. It's a space for people to take some time out and listen to these small acts of human kindness, which give us a bit of optimism when so much in the world could feel grim and beyond our control. There are amazing individuals out there helping change the lives of others. It's a really beautiful programme because it takes you through all kinds of emotions. It's so uplifting and hopefully inspirational. Cafe Hope with me, Rachel Burden, continues on Radio 4 and BBC Sounds on Monday mornings at 9:45.
BBC News at 10 o'clock. The Foreign Secretary Lord Cameron, who's visiting Jerusalem, said it's clear that Israel has made a decision to act after the major attack from Iran at the weekend. Lord Cameron, who's meeting the Israeli leadership, said he hoped it did so in a way that did as little as possible to escalate the situation, with fears mounting of a wider conflict in the Middle East. Our diplomatic correspondent James Landale, who's in Jerusalem and spoke to Lord Cameron, said the Foreign Secretary would also raise the issue of further sanctions on Iran.
Let's talk about sanctions. So it's hard for Iran to make those drones, to make those missiles that were flying over these skies just a few days ago. Obviously sanctions, it's going to have no impact now. It'll take many months, but it's about maintaining a sort of international alliance around Israel that frankly Israel hasn't had for many months because of the criticism of the West prosecuting its war in Gaza.
The UN is to launch a multi-billion-pound appeal to provide aid to the Palestinian population in the Gaza Strip and occupied West Bank. Earlier, the organisation called for everyone involved to address an increasingly acute human rights and humanitarian crisis in Gaza. The rate of inflation has fallen to 3.2% in the year to March. It's down from 3.4% in the month before. For some food products, including meat, crumpets and chocolate biscuits, with houses of 4. The mayor of the Ukrainian city of Chernihiv says at least 9 people have been killed and another 18 injured in the Russian missile strike. Ukraine's President Zelensky claimed the deaths wouldn't have happened if the country had received more help with its air defences. Paedophiles convicted of the most serious offences could lose parental rights over their own children. An amendment to the law has been tabled by the senior Labour MP, Harriet Harman. And the Lloyds Banking Group has issued a warning to people buying tickets for Taylor Swift's latest tour to be careful of scams. Estimates more than £1 million may have been lost to fraudsters based on complaints it received. BBC News.
Our book of the week is Zainab Badawi's History of Africa, told through the voices of Africans themselves. In today's instalment, she'll be focusing on the slave trade which took place across the Indian Ocean. You can hear that at 11:45. But now on Radio 4, it's time for Women's Hour with Jessica Crichton.
Good morning and welcome to the programme. Now, as you might have heard in the news, a new report on smacking children is calling for it to be made illegal in England and Northern Ireland, as it already is in Scotland and Wales. We'll be speaking to a doctor in Wales about how the smacking law has impacted healthcare professionals and parents. Also on the programme, the history of hypochondria and why it is often a term levelled at women more so than men. Plus, a leading women's community in Pakistan received global attention recently when their Facebook group was suddenly shut down. We'll hear from the founder about getting it reinstated and how she created a safe space for women throughout Pakistan to discuss subjects that were often considered taboo. We'll also be hearing from the newly crowned leading women's cricketer in the world. And she's English. Nat Sciver-Brunt tells us about winning this latest honour after an incredible 2023 season. And live in the studio will be the star of popular BBC police drama Blue Lights, which has recently returned for a second series. Sian Brooke will talk to us about the challenges of playing a police officer in Northern Ireland. Now, as always, if there's anything on the programme that you'd like to comment on, anything you feel you relate to, disagree with, or have an experience of, do get in touch. You can text the programme on 84844. Text will be charged at your standard message rate. You can send us a WhatsApp message or a voice note as well on 03700 100 444. Be careful of the data charges. You might want to use Wi-Fi if you can. We're always on social media as well, using the handle at BBC Women's Hour, and you can email us through our website. But first this morning, smacking children should be made illegal in England and Northern Ireland. That's according to the Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health. They call the current laws unjust and dangerously vague. The report warns that children suffer lasting mental and physical effects from being hit in the home. Now, striking a child is already illegal in Scotland and Wales, and in many other countries around the world, in fact. The government says that parents are trusted to discipline their children, and a Department for Education spokesperson said any form of violence towards a child is completely unacceptable, and we have clear laws in place to prevent it. But child health experts say children should be given the same protection as adults. Dr. Rowena Christmas is the chair of the Royal College of General Practitioners in Wales, and she was actually instrumental in introducing the ban there, which has been in place for about 2 years, I believe. Good morning, Dr. Rowena.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for coming on. Just tell us more about this smacking ban in Wales and what exactly it means for children and for parents.
Well, it's much easier for us now. You know, it's so clear. We can just explain as GPs or health visitors. All of us just have a very straightforward line. It's not legal to smack your child anymore, and we can back that up with all sorts of reasons why it's not a good thing to do. Before the ban came in place, there was a very ambiguous situation where you were allowed to smack your child so long as that didn't cause reddening of the skin that lasted for more than a certain period of time. And you can imagine, you know, different children have different skin colours, different sort of reactions to a smack. It was really unclear for parents and for health professionals.
Okay, so it's much clearer now, but what do we know about smacking as a technique, as a discipline technique? Has it been proved to be effective?
It has been proved in dozens of studies that I looked at sort of to prepare the evidence for Welsh Government to not be effective at all, and virtually all the studies I looked at showed that there were significant risks to children who were subjected to this form of discipline. It can impact their relationship with their parents or their carers negatively. It can affect children's mental health and also their mental health as they go into adulthood. It can make children a bit more likely to be aggressive if they see their mums and dads deal with the situation with violence. They can do that themselves in the school. And it can make them more likely to be bullied, but also it can make them more likely to be bullies themselves. And then even moving into adulthood, there's an increased risk of them abusing their own spouse or their children. And they're more at risk of being criminals themselves when they go into adulthood. So there's just so many reasons that this is a bad thing.
So we're seeing what you believe to be our knock-on effects from being hit in the home. As it stands at present in England and Northern Ireland, parents might be able to argue that slapping, smacking is reasonable punishments to avoid breaking the law. So you believe that under no circumstances that should be allowed, and the law in England and Northern Ireland needs to go that one step further?
I absolutely think that, and it's really helpful to have a straightforward, non-ambiguous message. And you know, I'm safeguarding lead for Wales for RCGP, and there are times when you're trying to work out, is this child at risk of physical abuse? And the parents could say, oh no, this was just reasonable punishment, this was because they've been naughty, I've smacked them. It now removes all of that sort of difficulty working out what's going on. You can just tell parents, no, this isn't the right thing to do. But to be honest, the majority of parents that I see who smack their child, they'll often come in to see me in morning surgery very distressed themselves, explaining that they've lost their temper and smacked their child and asking what to do about it. We know from studies that 85% of parents who smack their children say they do it in the heat of the moment, in anger, and that's terribly frightening for children. You know, if they see their mum or dad have got cross and then they're smacking them, there's none of the calm, rational sort of, this is what will happen if you do the wrong thing, understanding beforehand. So parents need that extra support. If they know there's a line that they have crossed that then is sort of moving them into criminal territory, they're much less likely to smack their children, and that's what we've seen in Wales.
I wonder if you've come across any parents who have said, I do smack my child, and they think it helps. It not as a way of them releasing their own anger, but of just being able to discipline a child that doesn't go anywhere near grievous bodily harm or anything like that. Doesn't, they believe, go over that line?
I've definitely come across that, and this is a really polarised debate. So you tend to have people who strongly advocate for and against, and then the sort of majority of people are somewhere in the middle. Of course, there are parents who are good parents who have smacked their child, but that doesn't mean it's the right thing for their child. They may believe it's doing their child no harm, but the studies are very clear that it actually does cause harm, and you can do something else. You know, you can do time out or with removal of privileges, which actually is more inconvenient for the child. It gives them a longer period of time to reflect on what they've done, and here's the consequences of it. So that seems to be a much more sort of effective means of giving your child some discipline. So, you know, no screen time, or you can't have sweeties this Friday, or you're going to have to sit on the step for 2 minutes. Those strategies in a calm and reasoned way, so the child knows what the consequences are and why, are far more effective.
Okay, so looking at other techniques that you can use to discipline, are there any parents who have fallen foul of the law since it's been in place in Wales in the last 2 years?
To the best of my knowledge, no, absolutely not. And actually, we really strongly pushed that message when we brought the law in. This is not about criminalising parents. This is about keeping children safer and giving a very clear message to parents that it's not the right thing to do, and there will be consequences if you do it. But no, to the best of my knowledge, no parent in Wales has been criminalised. And that's across Europe where there's other countries where there have been smacking bans. Parents are not being criminalised as a result of this. It's just generally improving parenting.
And how difficult is it to go from where Wales were 2 years ago in not having the ban to bringing that ban into place? Does it take a number of years? Because as we stand, the UK government say they have no plans on changing the law.
I think legislation always takes time. You know, these things are slow, but parental attitudes are changing all the time, and what sort of a decade ago would have been seen as reasonable behaviour, now far fewer parents are thinking it's acceptable to smack their children. So yes, it might take time to bring the legislation in, but I feel it's worth it, and that shouldn't be a reason not to press on.
Dr. Rowena Christmas, Chair of the Royal College of General Practitioners in Wales, thank you for coming onto the programme this morning. And already some of our listeners have got in touch. Tristan has said this: I don't understand why we can't smack children. I personally have never smacked any children, as I haven't needed to, as they are amazing and have been brought up so well. But some children definitely need taking in hand. How else will they be taught? Some children / young adults have no discipline and order. How are we meant to teach these people? By being weak and letting them get away with their behaviour? Question. Mary also saying this: smacking and shaking must be banned. Thank you for everyone that's getting in touch. Do continue to. You can text, you can WhatsApp or voice notes as well if you feel you'd rather get your message across that way. And we're also on social media at BBC Women's Hour. And of course you can get in touch about anything you hear over the course of this morning throughout the programme. Now, some have described it as the cricket equivalent of the Oscars. Nat Sciver-Brunt has won the Wisden Leading Cricketer in the World Award, and it's the first time it's been won by an English woman in its 10-year history. She's been a key player for England since her debut back in 2013, helping them to win the World Cup on home soil back in 2017. She was also named the Women's Cricketer of the Year in 2022, and then again in 2023. She even has a shot named after her. That's when you know you've really made it. I spoke to her earlier about what it means to receive this latest honour.
It feels pretty special. Yeah, I took a little moment yesterday actually and felt a bit emotional about things. I'm not really sure why. Maybe it's just the time of the month. But yeah, really proud, and yeah, keep getting these messages from family and people that I know. So yeah, it's been pretty special.
Why did it make you feel emotional?
I don't know. I guess at the time I was sort of taking stock of what I've done, and also what my wife Catherine's done as well, of course. Actually, when you're in it, you don't really realise, I guess, the impact you could have, or you know, the role model you could become, or the things that you could do.
You've achieved many things on and off the cricket field. Where does this one rate?
Pretty high. I think probably not as high as the 2017 World Cup. And yeah, as a person, my goal was never to win like individual personal accolades and things like that, but if I could help my team win something or inspire some people along the way, yeah, I'd be really happy. So
you mentioned England winning the World Cup there being one of the highlights of your career. That was back in 2017. That felt like a breakthrough moment for women's cricket, particularly because that World Cup was in England. Is that how you felt?
Yeah. I think we'd not really experienced anything like that in terms of the crowds that followed us and all the teams around. And yeah, it did feel like a big moment at the time, and we always sort of look back on that and think that was probably the start of, I guess, our journey now. But you know, when you're in it, you're like, this is such a big moment, like things could really accelerate from here. And then we had COVID and a couple of things that probably didn't help that. But yeah, we're in such a good position now, women's cricket, that the summer that we had last year, the amount of people that came to watch us and who are just interested in us, and just things that make cricket a bit more normal and put it in people's eye line a bit more. Yeah, cricket's in a pretty cool space at the minute.
Yeah, more people are watching it than ever before. It's getting more media exposure as well. If you compare where it is now to where it was when you made your debut for England back in 2013, what are the major differences?
I think I guess probably the professionalism of it all, and the amount of cricket that we play all year round. We've got opportunities outside of international cricket as well, and just the game has really exploded, and obviously that's helped with a lot more money and provision provided to us in the game and throughout, from international to grassroots cricket. So yeah, it's come a long way, cricket.
You mentioned the money there, and you are now the highest paid female team athlete in the UK, thanks to your role with the Mumbai Indians in the Women's Indian Premier League, which is another important achievement. Do you see it that way? Do you see the fact that you're earning more now as a player as important?
Yeah, because we dedicate our whole year to it and make sacrifices in that, you know, you can't go with your mates to this, you know, concert or, you know, a weekend away or whatever it is in the summer. And yeah, it's nice to be paid whilst you're doing a job that you really love. It's going to be hard to find something that I love doing as much as playing cricket, I guess, when I'm finished. So making the most of it now is really important. I mean, when I started, I had absolutely no idea that this would happen. I was just happy to play and get onto the team and take it a bit lightheartedly, because there's not really any pressure to do well, because there's no pressure on you to keep your contract or, you know, things like that. And from when I started to now, like, people coming in now have got to be used to the pressures of media or the pressure of performing enough to keep your contract or whatever it is. There's a different mindset now. Cricket's come a long way and changed quite a lot.
You mentioned the pressure there, and you've been quite outspoken in speaking about mental health and you personally taking time away from the game to deal with your mental health. Did you learn a lot about yourself in that process? And I suppose, why did you feel the need to talk out? Because you could have done that process in private.
Yeah, I could have. Well, at the start it was important for me to take a break, and so much more needed than I realised, I guess. And when you're in it, you're like, oh, I can't let people down, I can't leave the team hanging, or ultimately the best thing for me was to take a break. Actually making that decision is the hardest part about probably realising that you've succumbed to the pressure or whatever it is at the time, but the best thing for you. And yeah, speaking out was important, because I know there's so many people on the team that at times, you know, have a really difficult time but don't realise that actually they can make it better, or there are things that they could do. But yeah, mental health is so important to sport, to everyday life, to everything. And yeah, it just made me realise little things that I guess I could use to tell me that, you know, maybe I'm not okay at the moment. I need to, you know, have a day for myself, or try and think on things that will, I guess, put things in perspective, so that, you know, whatever it is in my head that is going on doesn't seem so big. But actually, whenever I speak about it or speak to, you know, someone close to me, or you know, the coaches or the team support staff, it doesn't seem as big. So yeah, whenever it's locked away in the mind, it always gets bigger than it really is, I think.
And you've spoken out about the support that you've had, in particular from your partner, who you have mentioned already, but for those that don't know, is Catherine Sciver-Brunt, who used to play alongside you for England. So tell us, what is it like playing at the elite level, travelling the world, playing cricket with your partner?
It's pretty great, actually. I don't know why people don't do it more often. Yeah, it's a special thing, I guess, in that we have a relationship, and that we're able to live in each other's pockets for most of the year and not get too annoyed at each other. That's a
Congratulations. That's a feat in itself.
Yeah. But no, it's really special to have someone there that, you know, you can look to in the hard times, and also celebrate things with as well. And yeah, that is really meaningful. We were always a bit wary of, I guess, not flaunting it, but people's partners couldn't travel away all the time, and obviously when they did, we all had such a brilliant time. But yeah, we didn't want to flaunt it too much, and everyone, like people in the team, like you guys can just like have a day together. Like you don't need to come with us all the time. We're like, yeah, it's fine. Like, we're happy. But she's obviously retired, so we're sort of transitioning into what that looks like, and her not being around all the time, although she did come away with me to part of the WPL and to New Zealand, so
she couldn't keep away. And she's also been commentating on occasions on you whilst you're playing cricket.
Yeah, I don't think that is what she was really signing up for when she went into commentary, because she doesn't like watching me play anyway. So it's much better when we're on the pitch together. But yeah, she's been really enjoying the commentary and has got a lot of really good feedback actually. But yeah, she's just working out what she wants to do and where she wants to. And Catherine never does anything by half, so yeah, that decision is quite important. But yeah, it's such a great thing to have that support from your spouse whilst doing things that can be really under pressure and really difficult at times, but also, riding the highs and lows with you is, something that we'll cherish.
Now, Nat, you've won countless awards over the years. In 2018, you were one of 5 Wisden Cricketers of the Year. In 2022, you won the Professional Crickets Association Women's Player of the Year. I could go on and on and on. But one of the major things that says I've made it in cricket is you've got a shot named after you, the Natmeg. Tell me about this, because this is incredible.
Yeah, that's sort of gone to sleep a little bit, actually.
Well, let's bring it back to life, shall we?
Well, yeah, but usually it's due to a technical flaw, so maybe that's a good thing. But yeah, I was playing in the World Cup in 2017, and I mean, I'd actually done it before, and our media manager caught it on video, but she didn't